So if you didn't already know, you could learn so much from downloading the stems to one of your favorite songs. I completely forgot I had the stems to one of my favorite Noisia songs on my hard drive. Could this be? I then went on a little bit of a deep dive, see what I could learn from the stems, whether that be sound design things or compositional things. I then made a drop and took the things that I learned from the stems and applied them to the drop. And I was like, if this works well, I'm going to turn it into a video. It worked well, so here's the video. 7 things on what I learned from one of my favorite Noisia tracks. And before I get a million comments saying like, where'd you get the stems from? I got them from Noisia's official Patreon. I have no idea if these stems are still up. I delete some of their older stems, so who knows if they're still up, but... so sick! Just the drums, oh my god. First of all, what I learned is a lot is centered around the kick. They always make room for the kick and have breaks for the kick and have different basses on top of different kicks, etc, etc. The kick is always going to be punching through the mix, especially in drum and bass, and if you can kind of manipulate that in a certain way to add extra thump and extra layers to the kick, then it works wonders. So for example, if you see in the stems here, wide open kick, before the snare comes in, bass and then bass change. So I applied that and I'll show you what it sounds like. Well, this is my drop. Sorry if it's not as good as the Noisia one. Drums, a lot of happening even on top of the kick, including cymbals. And this bass is starting instantly. And what I did is created a separate thump bass, is what I'm calling it. And I also removed the drums just to give way to the kick for that first initial downbeat. With that and the bass, kind of like a little suspended section before it smacks in with the snare. So it just sounds way better than just going straight into the first bass. And also what I learned with this impact bass, going back to the original bass stem, a little bit of a pitch envelope, and if you can see there's a little bit of a notch in the low mids as well. So I played both to the bass. Sounds alright, but could sound cooler. Introduce the pitch envelope. Descending pitch, sounds great. Also a filter with a notch here around the low mids. Probably way too low. Depends where you want to introduce that notch. Sounds quite cool. So the pitch envelope and the notch together make it sound amazing. So before pitch envelope and notch, yeah, sounds alright, but let's introduce them both back in again. Just way more impact for the kick. It's all about the kick. So yeah, there's pretty much 3 things already. Have space with the kick and have impact basses for that specific kick. Add in a pitch envelope for even more impact. Add in a notch filter because drum and bass. Another cool thing I picked up, which is one of those moments where like, really? Okay, that sounds sick. Introduce a wide element to a specific bass. So if you listen very carefully here, this bass right here. If you're listening on headphones, you hear just a little kind of meow at the edges. It's like a random percussive white noise just burst, and it doesn't happen straight away. I reckon it happens around here, so it's like a delayed wide burst of sound. So I thought to myself, this is cool, add in a wide layer but delayed, so it's not playing at exactly the same time as the bass. If you just hear the bass by itself, fairly mono, introduced this little side layer and made it very wide with some phasing and whatnot. This is what it sounds like. And I'll render it out so you can visually see it. All it is, just a little plucky wide sound. I could have actually extended it out over here, but it sounds good at the start anyway, so yeah, it's like a burst of noise just on the sides. It sounds really cool. So before, not too much impact. It's the very subtle things. It would have been super hard to pick that up just listening to the normal track, but the stems is just like isolated and you're like, hold on a second, there's some Noisia shenanigans happening here. Another random thing, just listening to the drums by themselves. If you notice, the snares are at slightly different pitches. So these 2 snares right here. One's higher than the other. Classic Noisia thing, so I thought, why not? I'll just chuck it on the snare, see what happens, and yeah, it sounds pretty cool. So this is just the normal snare, and then the next section pitched it up 1 semitone. Random things like this, man, Noisia. I guess it adds to the variation and just randomness inside the Noisia drop. Ever hear the saying, sometimes it's the notes you don't play? Well, in this particular track, They could have had a bass here, but they chose not to. I'll see what that sounds like actually. Kind of works, but introducing the spaces, like I said, the notes that you don't play, or the bass that you don't play, just have a gap in your basses for one beat. Snare comes in even harder, it's just, yeah, sick. Super easy thing to take away from those stems. Could have taken it away from the actual track really. Isolated, you can visually see it even clearer. So I did that for the second lot of basses over here. Notice how it's playing throughout the entire section. Subtle gaps, mute tool. Let me show you. Now, in the utility, it's being muted for that specific kick. Also deleted the drums for that particular beat as well, so nothing else is playing. It's just kick, no bass, and then bring it back in. I didn't even realize this before, but the same could be said about the snares. Breaks with the snares? I don't know, just breaks to accompany different sections of the drums. And another tip, kind of treading on the toes of what I talked about already before, but that classic notch introduced over a bass. I'll just mute the auto filter for a second. It's a classic metal rock mixing thing. Get rid of all the muddy frequencies around the low mids and it sounds so good. Same can be applied with D&B apparently. And just any bass heavy music for that matter. Cool little sound design hack. If you notice your bass is just a little bit too much, try the notch filter. It's so easy to do. Auto filter in Ableton and it's this notchy thing right here and then drag it into place. And lastly, it's my 7th thing, you can absolutely cook a lead with distortion. If it's just sitting on top of the mix and the mix is kind of busy, you can really get away with throwing a lot of distortion at a particular element, such as this lead here. Already a little bit distorted, but I thought, you know what, turn up the saturation for this. It's not quite clipping, but you can hear it's very distorted. And over the mix. Don't overcook it too much, just learn to find the sweet spot. And there you have it, 7 things I learned from Noisia could this be. And one last listen to the mix, see if you can notice all the subtle things I just mentioned.